we're going to go ahead and take a look at an application problem dealing with proportions. So the following question is posed to us: a recipe for chocolate chip cookies calls for 1 1/4 cups of flour and 1 cup of sugar. The recipe will make 3½ dozen cookies. How many cups of flour will be needed to make 12 dozen cookies? Okay, so we have to kind of mine some information out of here. So the first thing that I note is what we want to establish what relationship we're talking about. So in this case, the problem is actually trying to trick you by giving you extra information that you're actually not going to be touching at all. So first off, if you haven't already, I would take a minute to pause the video and to read through the problem a couple of times and see what relationship you can establish before you come back to watch the rest of the video. Okay, hopefully you've gone ahead and done that. And if you read through, notice that in the problem they mention flour twice and they mention cookies twice in terms of how many dozens you're going to be making. So we want to go ahead and establish this relationship. That being said, for example, I note that they talk about 1 1/4 cups of flour. That will help you make 3½ dozen cookies. And then they're also asking you, well, how many cups of flour are you going to need to make 12 dozen cookies? Okay. The other piece of information that they talk about is this 1 cup of sugar. But notice that they only mention the 1 cup of sugar there. They don't ask you how many cups of sugar are you going to need to make 12 dozen cookies. They're only asking you about the relationship that's happening between the flour and the cookies. So this information for this particular problem is not needed. So let's go back to what we have. So we did establish that we have 1 1/4 cups of flour. And to make things a little bit easier on myself, I'm going to translate that fraction into a decimal. So 1 1/4 cups flour is the same thing as 1.25 cups of flour. And then let's talk about how many cookies I have. Well, I will get 3½ out. Okay, so then let's go ahead and establish the proportion. I know that I want to make 12 dozen cookies, but I don't know how many cups of flour I'm going to be using here. So we've gone ahead and we've mined out as much information as we could get from the problem. Now what we can go ahead and do is we can use our trick. So our trick states that we can go ahead and cross multiply. So I can do this 12 times 1.25, and that is going to be equal to 3.5 times x. Well, if we go ahead and do the multiplication, we get that the left-hand side, that product is 15. And then we are again left with 3.5x. We'll divide both sides to get x by itself, because with any proportion problem, when you're solving for a missing value, that is the goal. You want to find out what that missing value is. These will cancel out. And our final solution then, if you do the division, you're going to get an answer that says 4.2857, and it continues on. But this is what x is equal to. Well, you want to think in terms of the context of the problem. Do you have any sort of measuring cup that will allow you to get 4.2857 cups of flour? Odds are no, but we do have one where you could measure out 4 full cups of flour and then followed by another quarter cup. So your answer will be 4.25 cups of flour. Okay, that is the solution for that problem. If you're bothered by the fact that they give you that information for the sugar and you're not asked to do anything with it, why don't we go ahead and try to figure that one out? Well, I know that if I use 1 cup of sugar for the recipe, I will get that 3.5 dozen cookies. They had established that relationship in that first sentence. And then we could just ask ourselves, well, how many cups of sugar would I need then if I wanted to make 12 dozen cookies? So again, we can use the same rationale that we've been using. So we could do a 1 times 12. And then we could do an x times 3.5. This is going to leave us with 12 is equal to 3.5x, because 1 times 12 is 12. Divide both sides by 3.5. And we get that x is equal to 3.4286 about. So you might actually want to consider making your cookies a little bit sweeter. So we would say that this is about 3.5 cups of sugar. Of course, that's up to debate as to whether you would want to use extra sugar in the cookies or if you would want to pare it down. Okay, and that's about it. There are your solutions.